Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Outside the Echo Chamber from inside the state capitol as the 60-day legislative session continues. We have begun these first few shows talking about the state budget. Of course, Governor Jim Justice holding his final State of the State address last week went over all of that money that will soon be appropriated through different programs in the state. And joining me right off the top today, Acting Revenue Secretary Larry Pack. Larry, thank you for your time today. I want to begin with going back to what we saw last Wednesday in that State of the State address. Relatively flat budget, I believe $5.63 billion again. Why did you come up with that number from the governor's office, and where do we go moving forward with that flat budget on the books now?
So basically the governor wanted to come up again with a relatively flat budget. I think it goes up about 4% if you exclude the 1% increase, or the one-time increases. So we felt like that was a good number to be able to meet the needs of the citizens, the needs of the state of West Virginia. We did not propose to spend all the money that we think is going to come in. There's about another probably $100 million, $200 million that will come in over next year that we're projecting. Very well could be more. So the governor tried to put together a conservative budget that would really deal with some of the major issues. So we had some one-time spends in there. The largest part, of course, being raises for public employees, 5% raises for public employees. He thought was the most important thing that we needed to deal with. Inflation that's been created by the Biden administration has really crushed our state employees, really crushed West Virginians. So we want to make sure that we take care of our state employees.
How has that affected the budget? When you talk about a 4% raise, 5% raise, 6% raise in ordinary times, I guess there's no such thing as an ordinary time, but without the inflation that we've seen, that goes a lot further than when you're in an inflationary economy. How has that affected the numbers, and how has that made the job of trying to figure out how did this all get balanced harder?
Well, it makes it a little bit difficult, without doubt. It's about $120 million additional spend. But fortunately, we believe that the state of West Virginia will be able to earn that much money, or will receive that much money from our taxpayers. So where we,
and that's despite the tax cuts in personal
despite the
income
tax cuts, we're still having an increase in revenue, even with the roughly $800 million in tax cuts. The West Virginia economy is growing. Our taxpayers are paying taxes. Our taxpayers are working, and it's really good for the receipts that the government receives. So we have enough money to be able to give raises, along with doing some one-time things.
Now, for decades, we were very reliant on coal severance tax money.
Yes.
That money has been hemorrhaging over the last couple of decades, really,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty reasonable to say that will continue to happen. When you cook those numbers in and you realize where that's headed and unlikely to change, how do we offset that? What are some reasonable things that are done to say, okay, well, we have to project another loss in coal severance tax money. Here's how we can make up that shortfall.
The policies of the Justice Administration and the legislatures over the last number of years have really diversified our economy. So we're not as dependent on severance taxes, coal severance taxes, as we were in the past. Matter of fact, 75% of our severance taxes really come from oil and gas. And it is so fluctuates based upon price and production, but mostly price. But since we have a diversified economy, we're not as subject to the ups and downs of the severance. We've projected a modest amount of severance income for this year, but most of it's related to personal income tax being above estimates. Even though we have the big tax cut, sales taxes are strong, corporate net is strong. Again, we have a strong economy, and that equates into a lot of money for the revenue.
And when you talk about diversifying the economy, part of that equation is bringing in corporations and growing the base there. And to do that, you need some infrastructure in place. You need some things that the state might not have had in the past. What are some of the things that you focus on to make sure that you can get those jobs to come, those businesses to come? What's an efficient spend?
Yeah. Well, Governor Justice, when he started, he thought he really focused on a number of things, 3 or 4 things. Jobs, but he felt if we're going to have the jobs, we have to have a really strong infrastructure. So infrastructure being roads, being water and sewer. So the state of West Virginia spent millions of dollars, almost billions of dollars in that over the last 6 or 7 years, and that's brought a lot of jobs in. If we don't have those things, we don't have it. We've also spent a lot of money and a lot of emphasis on tourism. Right. Tourism has also brought a lot of people in. So people come in here to take advantage of this beautiful West Virginia scenery. They're spending money. It helps our tax receipts, and people are growing businesses from that.
One of the famous lines that he had in his inaugural speech was that, why can't we have Dollywood here in West Virginia? And, there was some play off of that, but
yeah, and we don't have the large Dollywood, but we got a lot of small. We got a lot
right,
of small
and
areas.
I guess that leads me to my next question. What is there a game changer down the road? Is there something like that can be done, or is it more a matter of just figuring out what you can do best and focusing on that?
Well, I think the big game changers are just some of the jobs, some of the industry that's came to West Virginia in the past few years. The new core steel being built, that's a game changer for southern West Virginia. Almost 1,000 direct jobs. That's a game changer. Berkshire Hathaway in Jackson County. So we're getting calls every day for businesses that want to be in West Virginia. Never seen that in my lifetime. It's just absolutely extraordinary. Those are game changers in the areas that they're going in, and we're seeing more and more of that, and we just keep building on it. So it seems like the more business you get, the more people that want to come to us.
We're going to be speaking with Mike Oliverio from the Senate here in a little bit about some of the bills that he believes will be working their way through that chamber. I know a couple of things that have been brought up that kind of go along with the tax cuts that we were talking about, that are more focused on specifics here. I know that child tax credits probably on the agenda. And another one that I think a lot of people are talking about that want to know how this might work is eliminating the tax on Social Security benefits.
Yes.
Just speak about those topics a little bit, and I'm sure you've done the number crunching on that, and why you think that would be beneficial to so many.
So the governor asked us to come up with some suggestions for a modest tax cut this year. We didn't think that we could go as big and heavy as we did last year, so he asked us to come up with a modest tax cut. And the first one he was interested in was the tax on Social Security. There's only about 10 states that tax any portion of Social Security income, and as most people are aware, our seniors have already paid income taxes on the Social Security. When they paid in over many years. So we didn't want to be an outlier any longer. This bill really rights a wrong. I mean, shame on the legislature and the governor that put it into place 25 years ago or whenever it was. So it's about.
There might be people that don't even realize that they're getting taxed on that. I mean,
my 85-year-old mother understands it. So,
wait, what is this?
Yeah, what is that? So because it lays on top of your pension income and what other income.
And right now that rate is in West Virginia, how much is getting taken out of everyone's Social Security check?
So you pay, I think it's 7.65% every payday for your entire work life.
That's a big difference.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot back in that check.
Yeah, so you don't want to pay tax on it twice. So it really rights a wrong. It's about a $37 million cut to revenue. State of West Virginia has it. They need to give it back and let the taxpayers keep it. It also impacts about 60,000 seniors in the state of West Virginia. So it's a lot of people.
A big senior population here.
Yes.
And maybe a peripheral bill that go along with that is there's some talk also about eliminating property tax for seniors as well.
Yeah, so we have one other thing for seniors and one for working families. So from a senior standpoint, the homestead exemption has not been increased for many years. So we have a lot of seniors that just need a little bit of help with their property taxes. West Virginians own more homes than any other state in the union. And so we just need to help the seniors be able to stay in. So it's probably about a $200 additional credit for people to help them pay their real estate taxes. And in addition to that, child care is a really big issue these days. And one of the reasons it's such a big issue, it's not like it was when I grew up. When I grew up, grandma was down the street and aunts and uncles were down the street, and you always had a lot of people.
It takes a village.
To help. It takes a village. Well, that doesn't occur now. So if we want to help people get in the workforce, we want to encourage people to get in the workforce, so we want to give them some help. And so this helps working West Virginians, moms and dads, to be able to get child care for their kids, for the children. And it's modeled after the federal program. We want to come up with a program that wasn't unique, that people would understand, so it's modeled after the federal program. And it's about $5 million, I think, total credits.
And that could tie in with the seniors too, because we have a lot of grandmas and grandpas raising kids.
Yes, absolutely. We absolutely do. Yeah. We also, on child care, we also have a very aggressive program through the DHHR that helps people and helps subsidize child care as well. So we're trying to go at it from both ends to help people at the low end of the economic scale, but also for folks in the middle.
Yeah. You talked about not going as big this year with the tax cuts. Last year was a very unique year. Not only did he have that big proposal about 30% personal income tax reduction, but there were a couple of elephants in the room as the session began with the PEIA mess, with Jim Kaufman from the Hospital Association saying, we're not going to be able to accept patients until you fix this. So that was a big concern. And then the DHHR, the whole restructuring of that. Those issues aren't as prevalent this year, so to speak. So was it in some ways easier for you guys to kind of take a breath back and be like, okay, let's just focus on the minutia now, and let's get to work on making sure that we're doing things that can work for us?
Yeah, again, from the governor's office and Governor Justice, it's about jobs, it's about economy, it's infrastructure, tourism. Those are the things that we really want to focus on. We believe that's what people care about, and if we can give people an opportunity to get a good job, that'll take care of a lot of bills in West Virginia. As far as restructuring government, if that needs to happen, we'll leave that to the next administration.
So what do you think that the governor will be keeping his eyes on over the next couple of months as this works its way through the cogs of the machine, so to speak here? Like you said, I'm sure he's focused on jobs, but this is his final year, so you don't want to have the appearance of kind of being a lame duck on there. I'm sure he'll still be getting.
Well, he's got a very aggressive agenda. I think these tax cuts are very aggressive. I know a lot of people said modest is $50 million, but you go back over the last 4 years, try to find another $50 million tax cut. There's not a lot of them, so that's still a really big issue. We're very pleased, very blessed in West Virginia to have an abundance of money in the state treasury right now. The governor has put forth his programs of where he thinks that money should be spent and how it should be spent. So we'll be working with the legislature to get his priorities through. So,
and therein lies the rub. When you have that money and you know that it might not be there forever, you have to make sure you're responsible with it.
Yeah.
And from a macro version, a 30,000 feet above the ground version, as you look at this long term, what do you think needs to be done? What has to happen specifically to make sure that we don't get into a situation where we're spending that money a little too recklessly, and if those monies go away, then you're in trouble?
Well, what the governor believes is we need to make sure that we don't grow our everyday budget. He calls it the base budget, right? So we don't want to grow our household budget. So the extra money that we have, we want to put it in investments, one-time spends. So help our schools. There's $150 million in for schools. There's $100 million for rural hospitals. Those are the things that he thinks we ought to really encourage and use this money for. So one-time spends is a big part of the budget. That's something he's really worked on over the last 5 or 6 years that we've had this additional money, and so that's one of the reasons our infrastructure is much better than it was. We've still got a long way to go, but when you get about 20 or 30 years of deferred maintenance, it takes a while to catch up, and so we're working hard to catch up.
Now, the personal income tax cut was big. A lot of people thought it might be too aggressive. What did the final numbers come in at? What did that do to revenue for the state?
So the cut was 21.25%. The governor was proposing 50%, so we didn't get what we wanted. But when you work with the legislature, you make the best deal you can.
Compromise.
So we compromised, made the best deal we can. There's some triggers that hopefully will bring it down in the future. The governor is a strong believer that if we really want to grow West Virginia's economy, eliminating our state income tax is the best way to do that. He's came up with different programs as how to do that, but other than the trigger coming this year, we felt like, again, we'll leave that to the next administrations to handle that.
And what did that do to the numbers in terms of the revenue that you brought in from personal income tax last year?
So basically, we passed a 21.25% cut, but through 6 months, it's only down, I think, 10%. So that means more West Virginians are working, more West Virginians are paying tax.
And that was the goal: increase the base.
Increase the base, and so we're seeing as our economy grows, we think we do not think
still
we're going to
miss. Still on a path to have that continue.
We do not think we're going to miss those taxes at all.
Okay. So finally, my last question to you as we go over these next 60 days. First of all, are you enjoying your new gig, so to speak?
Yes, yeah. The governor believes in multitasking.
Sure.
So I'm still senior advisor and acting secretary, so he's got me a little bit busy right now. But that's that.
Yeah, you're pretty high on the. You'll never be as high as Baby Dog, but you're getting
so
there.
he keeps everything pretty tight.
Just give me your kind of succinct, concise version of what you think a successful 60-day session here would look like for West Virginia.
A successful 60-day session is to get the tax cuts through, pass the budget, and most of the budget, the one-time spends would come through that the governor has prioritized. That's going to be a successful session.
And you're confident that that'll happen?
Yes, we believe it will.
Absolutely
Believe that will happen.
The first few weeks of session, everyone's happy, they're getting along. We can get this done.
There's always compromise, but the governor's been very successful at getting his programs through. Maybe not to 100%, but pretty close.
We'll check back in on crossover day and see how that's working.
Very good.
Larry Pack, Acting Revenue Secretary from the Governor's Office, thank you for joining us, sir. And we'll be right back to talk with Senator Mike Oliverio when Outside the Echo Chamber continues.
At Dutch Miller Automotive, we've grown quite a bit over the last 60 years, but our core principles remain the same. We believe in treating our customers and our team members like friends and family, and we see it as our obligation to give back to all the communities we are so fortunate to do business in. In just West Virginia alone, we've grown from one location on the west end of Huntington to 10 rooftops employing more than 500 Mountaineers. Check out the inventory from all of our stores at DutchMillerAuto.com. Dutch Miller Automotive Group, West Virginia proud.
At CAMC, our focus has always been on building better healthcare for you. Our new Center for Learning and Research combines cutting-edge technology with hands-on experience for physicians, nurses, and other caregivers. Using specially designed simulation rooms and robotics with expert instruction, our learners expand their expertise. Because you deserve the most advanced care possible, now and in the years to come. Welcome to the future of medicine.
The HD Media Plus app is your ticket to see all the action on the hard court as it happens.
Saunders with the three.
Sam banks it in! Sam from three buries it off the glass! And the Red
Dozens of live games that you won't see anywhere else, featuring some of the best teams in the state. Watch the game live or later at your convenience, and the best part, it's free. Download the HD Media Plus app today to your smartphone or TV so you won't miss another shot.
Welcome back inside the state capitol as another episode of Outside the Echo Chamber continues. Joining me now is Senator Mike Oliverio from Mon County. You are an important man in that chambers. You're on a couple of very important committees, finance, education, just to name a couple. I just wanted to talk to you to continue our discussion about the budget. We were there last week when the governor gave his final state of the state and outlined another flat budget. And a lot of West Virginians are wondering how that money is going to be appropriated and spent responsibly. A couple of things that I want to bring up right off the top because it's got a lot of people talking. Child tax care credits, child care tax credits, and eliminating the tax on Social Security benefits. I think that could go a long way in helping seniors. But that's something that has to be done responsibly when you're talking about, again, taking revenue out from tax cuts. If you will, I know this is a long-winded question, but to unpack those two issues for us and talk about your stance on it and how you think it could help West Virginia.
Sure. Well, let's start. The governor didn't propose a flat budget. Hundreds of millions of dollars of spending beyond last year. And we have to balance that with the fact that we cut almost $800 million in tax cuts.
Right. And I'm glad you point that out. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm glad you pointed that out because I think where people are getting that flat from is when you're talking about it being in an inflationary economy, because the economy as a whole has inflated to a level where the budget keeping up with that still appears relatively flat. But you brought up a good point, and technically it's not a flat.
Right. You know, the inflation that we as citizens feel is 40%, I mean, or at least the highest in 40 years. I'm sorry, is what I meant to say. But
there are some goods that are up 40%.
Yeah. We feel inflation at a rate, the highest in 40 years, and that's everything from gasoline to all our groceries and consumer spending. So what's happened with the governor's budget is the governor outlined a number of objectives that I think most West Virginians look at and say, hey, that makes sense. Our challenge is how do we fund those with the pressures of the tax cuts that have occurred, which were done to address citizens facing 40-year high inflation. And, we're done to allow our citizens to keep a few more dollars in their pocket. How do we balance that with rising expenditures and reducing revenues in some areas of the budget? And that will be our real challenge the next 50 days.
And the next few years, really, because, I was talking to Larry Pack before in the previous segment. One of the things we've dealt with in this state for years, going back to the 70s and 80s, was a reliance on coal severance tax. That money's been hemorrhaging over the last couple of decades, probably will continue to do so. We have found some ways to offset that. And he said, obviously, the catchphrase is diversifying the economy, which is easier said than done. But in many ways, it's going to take, and it is a challenge, to figure out ways to bring in permanent monies that can offset what is going to be continued loss in coal severance, although natural gas and oil has helped make up for some of that.
No question the economy has been diversified. About 3% of our workforce now is in coal. That would have been an unimaginable number 30, 40, 50 years ago. So yes, our economy is diversifying. If we skip back a year and then go back 5, that window, that roughly 5-year window, West Virginia had between $5 and $6 billion of private sector investment that came into our state to create jobs, stimulate our economy. Between $5 and $6 billion in that 5-year window total. The next 12 months that preceded, we had between $5 and $6 billion in that 1 year. So the economy in West Virginia is screaming forward. We have to balance that. And part of what we're trying to do with those tax cuts that we passed are reduce the amount of money that citizens have to take out of their own pocket and give to government. That helps fight that 40-year high inflation. It also stimulates our economy as they're spending that money in the economy instead of giving it to the government. And the third thing it does is it sends a signal across the country that West Virginia's personal income taxes are coming down, and maybe I should consider, as a remote worker living somewhere else, maybe I should put West Virginia on my checklist of places I want to go. And the economists that have been advising us have told us, when you can reach that point where you've cut about 50% of your personal income tax, all of a sudden citizens around the state doing that calculus in their head start to think, this is real. They're really making an effort. And so the way our budget's structured right now, we believe that on June 30th, we're going to hit the first trigger that was built into the tax cuts. And the way that trigger will work is it will reduce the personal income tax by approximately 8.1%. So our tax rate will come down. Again, it'll help our seniors and others battling this 40-year high inflation, and will send that signal loud and clear to citizens around the country, come to West Virginia.
Back to what we were talking about with the specifics here, though, on eliminating tax on Social Security benefits for seniors. There's an element of that that's not just like giving them a break, but also a lot of people say just it's doing the right thing because they've already paid taxes on that money when they paid into the system. So it's almost like a double dip there. But again, with the elderly population and senior population in the state, that's going to take a big cut out of the state's revenue. We saw with the big personal income tax reduction last year that it did take a cut out of the revenue, not by much. I think it was about 10%, which is pretty good for a 21% tax cut to only lose 10% of revenue because you expand the base, and that's the theory here, right? You get more people working, more people paying in, you can afford to have that loss in each person's tax that they pay into the state. But for seniors, that'll be another slice that you're taking out of that revenue. Is that a concern at all, or is that something that you think you have the money there for?
You know, right now, seniors don't have to pay Social Security tax based on certain incomes, and maybe we can expand that or address that issue to enable more seniors to not have to pay tax on their Social Security benefits. Whether we can completely eliminate it, it's going to have to be something we figure out in the coming weeks. But let me say this about the personal income tax, just a snapshot. You know, we went the first 3 months of this fiscal year, and that would be July, August, and September. And at the end of those 3 months, with a 21.25% cut in our state income tax, so somebody going from paying 6.5% to a little better than 5%.
Right.
With that cut, we were almost exactly the same personal income tax collections. So it shows that more people are working and more people are earning more money, that we could cut our personal income tax by 21.25%, and at the end of the first 3 months of the year have brought in almost the exact same amount of money. Right. And so, you know, we're hopeful that's a good signal of our economy.
The governor also proposing a 5% pay raise again for teachers and service personnel. The PEIA was a huge issue last year. That was the big salvo right across the bow from Jim Kaufman before the session even began, that they might have to stop accepting patients. I don't know if that would ever have come to fruition, but it was certainly a trigger to get some movement on that. It still appears as though there's work to be done there. A lot of people saying that it was another Band-Aid fix. We need to make sure that PEIA is fixed permanently and that teachers get their raises that they deserve so that we can keep those teachers here. You're part of the education committee. What have those talks been like, and do you expect that to happen anytime soon? I know it's difficult, it's a nuanced situation, but to make sure that teachers get permanent raises?
Yeah, you know, we tried to look at it in a holistic manner when it came to particularly our teachers and PEIA. So for example, we had a $2,300 pay raise. We did have an increase in PEIA premiums, but to be honest, it was the first increase in 12 years that teachers
They've been
faced.
kicking it down the road for a while.
And we held the premiums steady for our retirees. We gave to teachers and everybody else a reduction in their personal property tax, so they'll get those dollars back that they pay. So the combination of those things with the income tax cut, we were trying to not just make people whole, but have people be ahead. And so now this year PEIA is saying they need another 10%. We're wrestling with that, and it's a real challenge. Now, yes, we face some real threats from our hospitals about, hey, we're not going to take PEIA patients anymore. And Wheeling was the first one that kind of raised the white flag of surrender. We can't do this anymore. Right. And it did impact our thinking and our processes as we work through this. Right now we have a similar situation where Kroger has said we won't take PEIA prescriptions. And so we're trying to balance that. And how do we ensure that our public employees who work for us, we're responsible, how do we make sure that they're able to get the medications and things that they need in a way that they can afford them? So that's a balancing act that we're working on.
And it's tough for teachers. I mean, there's so many border counties in the state, and you can go right across the state and make 25, 30% more. It's tough to keep that talent here. And you mentioned PEIA, another increase, and I believe we're probably going to be looking at PEIA increases through at least 2028. And at the end of the day, it's going to end up being, when you look at from what they were paying last year to what they're paying in 2028, about a 70% increase in their premiums. That's a big hit. And regardless of, well, they didn't have one for 10, 12 years. I mean, it is what it is at this point.
Right.
And it's tough for a lot of those families.
Right.
So.
And PEIA may not be the solution.
Right.
And that's, we're looking at other alternatives to try to figure out how we can deliver quality health care, medical care, prescriptions, and things that our public employees need. PEIA is really not structured in the way a successful insurance company would be structured. I mean, you pay your premium based on how much money you make. An insurance company, and I work for a very large one, is typically going to structure your premium based on what your risks are and your costs. So it's a sort of a discombobulated system that we've tried to work within, and maybe at some point there may be alternatives to get beyond that or change that in such a way that we can meet our employees' needs.
Well, everyone always comes into these sessions gung-ho, or like, all right, let's get along, let's figure out ways to make things work for West Virginians. Sometimes that deteriorates quickly. I'll talk to you again on crossover day, and we'll see how things are going. Right. But what is your vision for what you're hoping to get done over the next 2 months, and what you think can be done to help the most West Virginians possible?
Yeah, I want to stress that point I made earlier about the significance of what's happened in West Virginia in just the last 12 months or so. Tremendous economic development advances. And I first came to the legislature over 30 years ago, and I mean, we had a budget of $1.2 billion, general revenue budget of $1.2 billion. This governor's proposed budget is $5.2 billion. So we're able to do so much more in state government, but we are trying to balance that burden on our taxpayers and try to have a level of fairness. We want companies across our state, across America, and around the globe to look at West Virginia and say, that's a place we want to do business. And so we're working through that checklist that they work through and trying to make sure that we're competitive in those areas. And as we do that, more economic development opportunity, less taxes for our citizens, more services available to our citizens, and that's the goal we're trying to pursue.
And the younger generation's a big part of that too. We have some serious brain drain in this state where it's tough to keep talent. They'll go to WVU and then they'll get a job out west and they're gone. Has there ever been any talk of any type of maybe incentives to try to make sure that children, and maybe we can work with the companies and work with these universities to say, hey, like almost a recruiting partnership where, you stay in state, we can do this X, Y, and Z for you, and then that builds up the workforce and keeps your talent here.
Right. All those kind of internship programs are helpful. We initiated the Promise Scholarship Program years ago under Governor Underwood. And one of the things that program did was it set up the ability to pay tuition for students. And some people said, well, gee, what if you pay their tuition and after 4 years they leave? And my theory always was, we can train and educate the next generation and they might leave. Or we can choose not to train and educate the next generation and they might stay. So my preference is that we invest in our young people from pre-K, K, 1 to 12, college, post-secondary, community college, all of those things to enable them to be successful when they do choose to stay. And we shouldn't put a gun to a kid's head and say, you have to stay in West Virginia. I think that you gain a lot sometimes by leaving West Virginia and coming back. And we want to be a place where people want to come back to.
there's a pull in the state. I don't know what it is. You know, I grew up out west in Phoenix, worked in West Virginia, went to Columbus, and came back because I wanted to. And there's something about when you live in West Virginia and you see the people, the genuine people, the salt of the earth people of West Virginia. There's something about that goes beyond just like tax incentives or, you know, I don't know what it is. And I'm going off on a tangent here, but
no, I think people across the world are seeing that with the Ascend program.
And I think that might be part of my next question is there something there? Is there something to that goes beyond just saying, well, if you bring your business in, I mean, is there something about this state that can attract people that maybe we aren't even thinking about yet? I mean, Pittsburgh did a nice job when they kind of reinvented post-steel with using their vistas and just their backdrops as kind of like an attractive tool to get people in there. I mean, we have an abundance of beauty in this state that maybe we could use to our advantage.
Yeah. The Ascend program, Brad and Elise Smith started that at West Virginia University several years ago. That's, you know, moving forward. Over 40,000 people have submitted an application to move to West Virginia and participate. That application takes 40 minutes to complete. So these are people who are serious. You know, the admission rate to come into West Virginia under this Ascend program is actually harder than to get into Harvard or Yale. So people want to come here. We've got some modest incentives for them to come, but when they come, they stay. And our remote worker program, this Ascend program, has been more successful than any of the others in the country. People have come and they've stayed, and almost half the people who have come have bought a home worth more than $300,000.
Wow.
So we're bringing in folks that have some dollars, that are, you know, growing our local economies. They're serving on community volunteer capacities and things like that. So, you know, the governor's got a little piece that adds to that with the military veteran program that he's proposed, where we make a special effort to try to recruit veterans and military into our community. We want to be able to offer them in-state tuition at our colleges and universities. So a lot of those things are going forward, and I feel like this is a very positive time in West Virginia. We have our challenges just like any other state does, but I think we have tremendous opportunities, and people are beginning to realize that. And the cooperation that we have. I'm on the Choose West Virginia team, and we've traveled around the country. I was part of the group that traveled to Seattle to market our state to Amazon and Boeing and Microsoft. And, you know, we show up with the presidents of multiple universities. We show up with legislative leaders, Democrats, Republicans. We show up with leaders in the governor's office, in the economic development, commerce. And we basically say, hey, we're here, we're West Virginia, we want to do business.
And that's been an ongoing program for people that might not be familiar with it. You're going to different cities throughout. Houston was one, Seattle, I think Chicago was one, and just touting West Virginia and seeing and learning from what they're doing out there too, and maybe bringing some of that back here.
Yeah,
it's been good.
We've had success with that, and I think a lot of those people, as they greet us, are surprised to see, boy, these Democrats are traveling with these Republicans, and the House.
Well,
and the
in your
Senate are
chambers, you only
hands.
have to worry about the three amigos now.
But it's I think it's been very positive, and you know, when we went to the Boeing facility in Seattle, they applauded us when we came in the room, and the reason why, they said, you know, with the production of the titanium that's used in the construction of their fuselages, they were buying that from Russia. Now they can buy that from West Virginia. And so that's the kind of example of, I think, how we're moving forward as a state and what we have to offer our people now.
Well, finally, I want to give you one chance to tout anything. Do you have any pet projects that you want to see get done over the next couple of months?
I want to see a transformation of our division of highways. We have limitations as to what we can do because they are, in fact, public employees. Limitations as to what we can pay public employees, how much equipment we can buy, and all those kinds of things. I want our division of highways to move more toward public-private partnerships where they can enter into agreements and actually do it, where they enter into agreements where companies can help them. And what I'm talking about is trucking company or an excavating company that has trucks. Enter into an agreement with them for, hey, a few months of the year while you're not out doing your excavating work in February and January, enter into an agreement where they can help remove snow and ice. And that's one of the biggest complaints I hear from my constituents, that our roads are so unsafe. And in a place like Morgantown, we're the epicenter of healthcare in West Virginia. And if our folks in Cheat Lake or Blacksville, if they can't make it in to Ruby, there's a patient whose life may be in danger. And the folks getting there may be in danger getting there. And so I want a real effort in trying to develop these public-private partnerships where our Division of Highways enters into an agreement, just like my own homeowners association does. My road in front of my house is the best road in West Virginia because we pay a little fee to a guy, and he comes around. He salts, he plows, and we can get out of our neighborhood.
Seems to go back to kind of like working smarter, not harder, right?
Absolutely.
Figuring out efficient ways to get things done. And Mike Oliverio, thank you for your time, sir. We appreciate it. I'm sure you'll have a lot of work to do over the next couple of months, so we'll let you get back to work and
absolutely
helping out the people of West Virginia. Mon County Senator Mike Oliverio here on Outside the Echo Chamber. We'll be back to wrap up the show right after this.
When it comes to surgical care, you want the best hands behind the robot. And those are ours. Choose Mon Health. Feel the difference.
Are you ready to unlock a future filled with remarkable pay, unbeatable benefits, and unparalleled satisfaction? Imagine embarking on a journey that offers you a college-level education without the weight of debt, all while earning a steady income. Look no further than the West Virginia Building and Construction Trades Apprenticeship Programs. Join us, and together, let's build a future that's brighter and stronger. Go to actwv.org to apply today. The West Virginia Building and Construction Trades, where the future is forged.
Welcome back inside the state capitol. That's going to do it for another episode of Outside the Echo Chamber. We want to thank today's guest, Senator Mike Oliverio from Mon County, and Acting Revenue Secretary Larry Pack from the Governor's Office. But be sure to join us next week on Tuesday. We have a show set up where we will be talking about the DHHR issue in West Virginia and a couple of bills that will likely be working their way through this building over the course of the next couple of months. Until then, I'm Rick Lord. Take care.